Hello YouTube, this right here is that rototiller that I was pulling with the engine, rebuilding the engine on it. And there's one other thing I have to do with this thing before I put the engine back on. And there's a couple pieces that are either broken or missing on the clutch for this thing. So it's got a plate clutch on it where it has a number of plates that turn with the engine and a number of plates that are fixed to the shaft on the transmission, and when it compresses them all together, they grab and make the engine drive the machine. And this is the clutch lever for it right here. So I gotta figure out how to tear this thing apart and get this clutch mechanism off of here. So I thought I'd make a little video on it. Okay, here's the top view of the rototiller clutch through the cover plate right here, and this right here is the clutch lever for this thing. When you pull back on it, it engages the clutch and locks in, and when you push it forward, it disengages. And if I pull, if you pull far enough back, it locks in. You can see, right here. Down in there you can see a little roller, and there's 3 of them around this thing, and it's got these arms that go in and reach and grab and pin it in the engaged position, and then it releases when you push the lever forward. I'm going to pull it all the way back and show it locked in. But you can see how it clicks in, and there's no clutch pad. There's no clutch material on this thing or anything like that. Half the plates are steel and half the plates are like a copper or brass, and you can see there's little tabs sticking out right there. And I'll show about this later when this housing is all off of here. But there's a cup-shaped piece that goes onto the engine, and it has slots that these little tabs grab into, and then that piece spins those plates with the tabs sticking out, and those are the brass pieces. And when this thing grabs and squeezes on them, it starts driving the shaft to the transmission and makes it go. But in any case, one of those little rollers there is missing, and a couple of little metal arms, they're like sheet metal plate, are broken half. So I gotta replace them, and I don't see myself finding any, so I'm just gonna make them. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Okay, here I was gonna show how this Ariens clutch, or this clutch on this Ariens rototiller is laid out. It's a wet clutch, and there was a few things that were wrong with it, so I took it apart to see what I needed to change. One of the things was that some of these little dogs right here were broken half, like this one right here. There was just this one that was broke, where the end was broke off, and one of the little rollers here was missing where that was broke off. So I made this one right here, or no, not this one. I made one to replace it, and some of these little pieces right here to replace other ones that had been worn and slotted out. So I figured it would be best to take it apart to replace those. This right here goes on the shaft on the transmission, and then all of these plates right here go on and stack up after that. The steel ones stays stationary with the shaft of the transmission, and then these copper ones here, they stay with the shaft of the engine. There is a cup-shaped piece that bolts onto the engine crankshaft that lines up with these tabs all the way around here, and I forgot to grab it. So in any case, they stack up one every other one, like that there, and then when you compress them, they create a really good grip. This right here is the same exact setup that is on a bicycle brake. On the older style bicycles that were one speed and you pedal backwards and it would lock the back wheel up. It uses the same thing, only it uses kind of like a nut that threads on a shaft, and that compresses all of them. And you know, they always work good on the bicycles. So this is just a giant version of that right there, and it's got enough grip to lock up and drive it. I imagine this is the same one that they use on the other one, the larger one too. This one's got a 9-horse engine on it, and the larger model had about a 16-horse. So I would imagine they probably used the same clutch, or maybe it might have been a little larger size, but I don't have one to gauge off of to know. But in any case, these right here go in these slots right against there like that. And yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about here, I guess. This right here has to go on first. And the fork for your hand lever to engage and disengage the clutch goes right on these pins. This right here is that bell housing where the engine mounts on, and this goes, the transmission bolts onto this end and the engine bolts onto this end. This little piece right here goes right in that fork right there like that, and then your hand lever for operating the clutch pushes it forward and backwards. And that right there squeezes these right here inward, and it causes them to crush these plates all together. So they have to go together. All like that right there. And then this ring right here is supposed to slide up and down the shaft. There we go. And then you have this adjustment nut right here, and it screws on the back of this right here, and those little rollers ride right in this little radius, and you can adjust it that way. And then this little set screw right here locks it in place wherever you turn it to. There's a little piece of sheet metal that lays down in here so that when you tighten the set screw you don't mess up the threads that this turns on. I don't have it in there right now because I was going to have to take it back apart to finish putting it together, but this is just a little piece that's in there. And it just lays in a slot there, and then the set screw pushes on this instead of the thread, and it doesn't damage the thread that way. But as you can see here, this thing, when it slides back and forth, it pushes those inward, and they're just enough of an angle that when it pushes them in, it tightens the plates together. So that's a pretty nifty setup that they have. So that's pretty much what I got for this. I took this thing while I had it apart, and it was you couldn't slide this bell housing off over top of this, but yet you needed to get down in to get this set screw, and there's a real pain to get and so on. So I took, and while I had it apart, I drilled and tapped these two holes. Because I had to use one of these style pullers to get it off, because it's the only way I could grip it, and it was one of those situations where you had to take each one of these off and fish it in there, and then put the thing back together just to be able to get a bite on this to draw it off. And that was kind of a pain. So what I did was I made it so that I could put one of these style pullers on it and just tap, screw right into there and draw it off. I figured that would make life a lot easier if I need to take it off again. So and I was amazed at how soft this metal was. I figured it had been made out of 4140 or something, tool steel that's, you know, tough but not brittle or hard, too hard. But this stuff right here it's as soft as hot rolled steel. I was amazed at how easy it tapped and so on. And oh, another thing, if for anybody that'd be trying to pull one of these off, make sure you take the set screws clear out, because it's got one set screw to lock the second set screw, and this second set screw, or the one that's down in the very bottom, it fits inside of a hole that's drilled in the crankshaft, or drilled in the shaft of the transmission. So you have to back it out far enough that it comes out of the hole. Otherwise, you'd be trying to shear this tip of this off while you're trying to pull the clutch out. So you can make sure that you get it out far enough, if not take it clear out. Otherwise you may do damage. You could pull on these hard enough, these plates, to bow them or bend them, and that's another reason why I put these in, so that I'm pulling on something solid that's not going to bend or break, rather than these thinner plates. And I don't want to tweak them and bend them, or else the clutch won't act quite right. So next I'll be showing with this right here, kind of piece back together, and putting the engine back on. So that's about it. Okay, today now I'm going to show how I installed this clutch into the front of this onto the front of this transmission. On here it looks like someone had peened over the key, where the key goes here, so that it cannot slide out and get into the other piece on the engine, because it'll be turning in sometimes when this is standing still. So because of that, I put this key where it hangs out of the shaft partially. Then that way I can get lined up on it. I don't have to try to line up on it while it's sliding back on the shaft as I drive it in. So we'll see how this right here works. Oh,
before I put this on. Another thing too, these slots on this piece right here have to be upward so that the oil can drop into it and lubricate it. So those right there have to be pointed facing upward. And this is a rather tight fit, so I was going to use something soft like a piece of wood here to help it along. There, it's moving back. I wanted to use a piece of brass, but I forgot. I keep a couple pieces of brass bar stock at work that I use to transfer to hammer on so that it doesn't damage the piece I'm trying to persuade. But I forgot to bring them home. Another thing I need to keep an eye on is I need to watch for that hole for that set screw to line up. But it's a little ways off yet. Still a little ways off. Oh, I starting to see the edge of it. Really close. Okay, I'm almost to the point where it's the fork is against that brass piece. I was going to take this loose after I got it most of the way on and arrange it so that fork got onto it. I also needed to move it anyways so that I could reach the set screws. This piece right here, this lever is in the way when yeah, that lever is in the way when you try to get to the set screw. So you have to have this loose to move it around anyways. Something to help, I put the gasket on last night and bolted this bell housing onto here with a gasket sealer behind it, some of the thick tarry stuff, so that it would glue it to the transmission. That way I don't have it moving around or anything like that, so that it's just one thing less that I have to handle. I'm going to give it a couple more taps and keep checking on it until the holes line up perfect. I got like a 1/16 of an inch to go. One more hit probably. And that looks really nice. So now I'll reach down in there with my set screw or Allen wrench and get that set screw in there. Okay, so my camera had run out of memory, and in any case, I was going to say that the transmission and the engine, the bolt holes that attach this to the engine and transmission, they go clear through, so the oil in both the engine and transmission can work back the threads and leak out. And cause you drips on the floor and things like that. So it's best to probably, with these, put some kind of a tarry gasket sealer or thread sealer or something on them so that the oil can't work its way back the threads. And that goes for both these 4 bolts and those 4 bolts. And previously I had forgotten to have this piece handy. This is the piece that goes on the engine, and it's got these little slots in here, and they engage on these copper tabs of these copper plates, and this right here is how it drives that. When you push the lever forward, it decompresses all the plates and allows these copper plates to move freely from the steel ones. And the steel ones are attached to are engaged on the transmission shaft, and the copper ones are engaged to the engine by way of this piece. So that's pretty much that. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put this on the engine, and then I'll turn the camera back on and show me aligning the engine to the bell housing here. So there it is. Okay, now I'm ready to put the engine onto the bell housing here, and I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to doing this, or getting this part done, because this engine with the flywheel, and it's got a counterweight that's underneath that bolts on the inner side of the engine too, and they balance out the rototiller, and I'll tell you what, the back half of that thing is so heavy to try to pick it up and move it around. It's picking it up by the handlebars and moving it around is like picking this engine up and carrying it. And this thing's all cast iron. It's heavy. It's like trying to pick up 75 pounds or something to pick up those handlebars just to maneuver this thing around. So that in itself is going to be really nice to have this engine back on there. It'll be a lot lighter to maneuver it. all the bolts are started on there, and I'm going to get the rest of it put back together. I'm going to skip showing putting everything back on the engine. So my next shot will probably be maybe of me starting it up after it's assembled. So that's pretty much it. I'm glad to get this thing over with and done. Okay, well, as you can see here, I got it put back together again, and it's pretty well started right up. I didn't fool with the carburetor at all, so there wasn't anything to be adjusted there. So it started right up for the most part. I gave it about 3 pulls, and it pretty much got going and evened out after that. So here's pretty much a quick look of it, how it worked. For the most part, this is all original paint, to the best of my knowledge. It looks like the handlebars, the white handlebars, might have been painted at one time, and you pretty much saw that I painted the engine block, but everything else pretty well looks to be the original coat of paint. There's the controls. As you can see, it's got reverse and a low and a high speed, and then you have this lever right here to engage and disengage the tillers, and then this handle right here is your hand clutch. So you pull back to engage it and push forward to disengage it. And this handle right here, it does 2 different things. It disengages a latch that allows you to move the handlebars up and down, and if you really pull it all the way back, you can turn it sideways, and there's a notch that it'll fit in, so you can stand off to the side and rototill and not walk through what you were tilling. So it's got 1 notch off in each direction. And then there's about 4 notches up and down with the handlebars. And something else that I found interesting that I've never seen on really so much on an engine before, that was laid out this way, is it's got a standard style governor spring that you adjust it so that it's stationary at that speed, like you would want on a generator or something like that, where you would adjust it manually with wrenches and then leave it alone. But this thing has a throttle on it, and this little throttle lever here, it pulls it down to idle, and then when you let off, when you work the throttle lever the other direction and it gets this lever here out of the way, it'll let it go up to its normal governed speed. So unless you have the throttle lever clear off where it's not holding it back, your governor doesn't actually do anything. It won't let it give it more gas if it needs to give it more gas to maintain the speed, unless this lever is clear out of the way, clear open, wide open throttle. So it's kind of an interesting setup. I wouldn't have imagined really putting it on a piece of equipment like this. I would have thought it would be really nice though on something like a generator, because you would want it to have a maintained governed speed where your throttle lever would not be affected, or you could, where it would go to its highest speed and maintain the voltage, but yet you might want to turn it, idle it down before you start it or shut it off and let it idle for a minute. So in any case, I'm going to put this camera back on a tripod and then start it up and run it through the ground here a little bit out in my little wooded area. So here it is. bore everybody too much with this project. I mainly meant it for anybody that was interested or has one of these machines that might wonder a little bit about it. So I guess that's about it for this project. Now I might be going back to that case crawler project with that shaft that I welded up. So that'll be my next thing that I'll do is probably grind that in on the lathe and a little surface grinder that I got. I guess tool and cutter grinder. So that'll probably be about next. See y'all later, YouTube.